Some forests keep the people who walk into them. And some people go looking to be kept. In 1997, 8 amateur survivalists disappeared in the Otsuro Ridge, a stretch of remote, uninhabited woodland in northern Washington near the Canadian border. No bodies were ever found, only their gear, oddly placed in a perfect circle, and a single message scrawled on birch bark: "We are still here. Do not speak our names." The forest was closed off. Officially classified as unstable land. Unofficially, the area became known as the Ridge of Echoes. In 2025, a documentary crew went in to find out the truth. Only one came back. This is her story. And the footage she never meant to show. I didn't even want to go. I'm not being poetic. I mean that literally. I was the backup. Sound tech number 2. The one who monitors lav mics and changes batteries. When Marcus told me the first guy dropped out, I said, "Why? Did he read the police reports?" Marcus laughed. He said he had a dream that something was waiting for him. A woman made of bark. I laughed too. But I shouldn't have. Because that's exactly what we found. The crew was 6 of us total: Marcus, director/producer. Obsessive, cynical, way too charming. Nina, camera op and editor. Quiet. Smarter than the rest of us combined. Eric, drone operator. Weed guy. Loved being outside, hated silence. Trey, researcher. Paranormal podcaster. Always narrating. Jules, grip. Strong, tattooed, scared of literally everything. Me, Olivia Vance. 28. Sound tech. Ghost magnet. We entered the Otsuro Ridge on June 2, 2025. We exited, I exited, on June 10. The rest. You'll see. We hiked in 6 miles. No cell service. Eric's drone buzzed overhead, feeding Nina real-time top-downs of the forest canopy. Dense. Beautiful. And wrong. Something about the pines, it felt like they leaned inward. Just a little. Like they were watching. By hour 3, we found the campsite. The one from 97. Still intact. Still circled. 8 rotted sleeping bags. Mummified. A ring of small, burnt stones around the perimeter. And in the center, a rusted recorder. Mini-tape. Ancient. Still intact. Trey grabbed it like it was gold. This is the real deal. Could be the last words of the Echo 8. I checked my audio kit. The gain kept drifting. And no matter where I turned, I kept picking up breathing. Even when everyone was silent. Night fell early. Unnaturally early. At 7:12 p.m., the sun blinked out behind the ridge. Like a light switch. We gathered around the fire. Jules refused to sit with his back to the trees. I agreed. Nina reviewed drone footage. Frowned. Something wrong? I asked. She nodded slowly. This doesn't make sense. I looked over her shoulder. The drone had looped over the same area for 3 hours. But the trees weren't in the same place every time. And in frame 1337, there was a figure. 7 feet tall. Standing motionless in the trees. Long arms. No face. Bark skin. Not there in frame 1336. Not there in 1338. Trey wanted to keep filming. It's verbatim what the survivors of the 70s said. The thing in the woods. That it only shows up in film, not to the eye. What survivors? I asked. Trey blinked. Wait, shit. I didn't mean to say that. There weren't any survivors. That's the point. We laughed it off. But no one slept that night. Because around 3 a.m., we started hearing our own voices in the trees. Not echoing. Speaking. Mocking. In the morning, Eric was gone. Just gone. No blood. No signs of struggle. His lav mic was still transmitting. I threw on my headphones, boosted the signal, and heard forest sounds layered under something mechanical. A heartbeat made of static. And then, his voice, "Why didn't you stop me?" I was already leaving, she was waiting under the roots. There's more of her now. We found the drone an hour later. It was stuck in the upper branches of a tree. No sign of Eric. But its footage showed him staring into a mirror nailed to a pine trunk. The mirror was reflecting someone else. A woman. Tall. Wrapped in roots. Nina pulled me aside. "I think we need to turn back." "We can't," I said. "We lost someone." "No, Olivia. We lose someone every time." That's when I realized, she wasn't talking about Eric anymore. She was holding something in her hand, a photo of herself. With a sixth finger. "I only noticed this morning," she said, voice flat. "I don't remember ever being different." That night, I dreamed of her. The woman. Not attacking. Just waiting. Kneeling beside my sleeping bag. Made of bark and bone. Whispering my name in my mother's voice. June 4th maybe. It was the third morning since Eric vanished. Or second. Maybe fourth. None of us agreed. Our watches had all stopped at different times. Trey's said Tuesday. Mine said 13 hours 66 minutes. We decided to head back. Pack up. Leave Eric a marker. Report him missing. It felt hollow, but we still thought this was the real world. Marcus led the way using his GPS. We hiked for 6 hours. And ended up right back at the circle. No one said anything at first. Then Nina knelt and touched the dirt. "Look." In the center of the old circle, where the birch bark message had been, there was something new. Carved into the earth with a sharp rock, "If you speak their names, they return to you wrong." Marcus finally snapped. "This is bullshit," he shouted. "Someone is screwing with us. This is part of that Reddit creepypasta bullshit, I swear." "Then how," Nina said quietly, "did that rock get warm?" She handed it to him. He dropped it with a hiss. "Because it was hot as a coal." That night, we heard Eric singing. From the woods. Off tune. Whispered. Just his voice. But his mic was off. We didn't go after him. Not because we were afraid. Because we all agreed that wasn't his voice anymore. It was something wearing his voice. June. We woke up in different tents. Not just different locations, different tents. Mine was green. I had a blue one when we started. Trey's beard was gone. Jules had a scar on his hand no one remembered. Our gear bags were zipped shut with red twine. We didn't bring twine. We sat in silence. Then Marcus pulled out the old mini-tape recorder from the original circle. He pressed play. It was static at first. Then a woman's voice. Desperate. Hoarse. "They don't die when you bury them. They listen. They wait for you to cry their name again. That's the door." Then something low. A moan. A breath. And a phrase, repeated 3 times, rising in volume. "Walk backward until the path forgets you. Walk backward until the path forgets you. Walk backward until the path forgets you." We all stared at each other. "Is that how they got out?" Nina asked. Marcus shook his head. "No one got out." Then, quietly, "Except you, Olivia." They were all looking at me. Because I'd survived. But the problem was, I didn't remember how. That night, Trey tried it. He walked backwards, muttering the phrase over and over. Headlamp off. We watched from camp. After 10 minutes, he vanished behind the trees. We waited an hour. Nothing. Then we heard sobbing. Trey stumbled back into camp at 1:26 a.m. He was barefoot, bleeding from the soles. And his face, it wasn't the same. Not broken. Not scared. Just emptied. What happened? I asked. Trey looked at me like he didn't know who I was. Then he whispered, "There's no end to the forest. It just folds inside you until you forget how to leave." We tried to sleep. But around 3 a.m., Jules woke up screaming. He'd pulled his sleeping bag zipper all the way up, trapping himself inside. Nina and I cut him out. He was covered in writing. Scratched into his skin. Not bleeding. Just there. All in block capitals, "Do not let her under your name." We lost Jules the next night. Literally. He walked 5 feet from the fire to piss. Never came back. No scream. No noise. Gone. We found his boots sitting upright at the edge of the camp. Each filled with water. The next morning, Nina was brushing her teeth when she froze. "Liv," I turned. My stomach dropped. There was a mirror. Tied to a tree with that same red twine. And inside it, Nina's reflection was crying. But she wasn't. We smashed it. That was a mistake. Because once it shattered, we could hear dozens of voices whispering from the shards. And not just whispering. Begging. "I'm still in here, don't forget me, don't forget me, don't forget me." Marcus lost it completely. He ran into the woods with a knife, shouting all our names over and over. "Come back, Jules. Eric, come back. Trey, Nina, Olivia, come back," we screamed at him to stop. Because we remembered what the dirt said. If you speak their names, they return to you wrong. That night, someone came back. It looked like Jules. Same height. Same limp. Same deer tattoo on his forearm. But we knew. The real Jules was gone. This thing was wearing him like an old coat. It sat by the fire with us. Staring. Not speaking. Not until Marcus broke the silence. "Jules." The thing turned slowly. Tilted its head. "Which one of me do you remember?" We didn't answer. It smiled. And then said my full name. In my mother's voice. "Olivia Lynn Vance. You should have never come back." Nina started hyperventilating. She turned to me, whispering, "It's learning from us. Picking up our rhythms. Our guilt." Guilt? She stared hard. "You don't remember how you got out, Liv. But I think you left someone behind. And it followed you." I couldn't breathe. Something inside me was turning over. A memory just out of reach. Me, running. Screaming. Holding someone's hand. Then letting go. Jules tilted its head again. "Do you want me to be him again? You can help. Just say his name louder." We locked it in one of the tents. Lashed it shut with cables. It didn't resist. But every few minutes, it whispered. Not threats. Just questions. "What day is it, Olivia? Where's your sister? Isn't this what you wanted?" The whispering got inside me. I started hearing it in the sound waves of my recorder. Under every frequency. Every pitch. One night, I played back 20 seconds of forest noise. Filtered it. Slowed it down. Underneath the wind, I heard, she's waiting in the reflection of your last memory. Nina didn't sleep at all. She sat with her camera batteries in her lap, loading and unloading them in a cycle. Why do they keep coming back wrong? She whispered. I didn't know what to say. She reached into her bag and pulled out a Polaroid. Held it to me. It showed all 6 of us standing together. Except my face was missing. Just a blur. Like the film refused to capture me. Then came the sobbing. Not from the fake jewels. From the trees. Thousands of voices crying in sync. Like wind sobs. Like guilt echoing. Trey clamped his hands over his ears. Make it stop, and then, he just walked into the forest. No light. No shoes. Just walked. We followed. Barely. Nina and I shouted for him. But the forest turned on us. Every step forward took us somewhere new. Somewhere familiar. I stopped walking when I saw the playground. It was mine. From childhood. The one in Chicago. The one that burned down. Fully intact. In the middle of Atsuro Ridge. Swing swaying. Chains groaning. No wind. Then the mirror appeared again. Tied to the swing set. But this time. It didn't reflect me. It reflected my sister. She was mouthing something. I leaned close. She said, "You left me here, Liv. You left me to die." I screamed and smashed the mirror with my mic boom. And I remembered, not the whole thing. But enough. It wasn't just me who came to Atsuro Ridge last time. It was my sister and me. We'd hiked off trail. Found the circle. She fell. Hit her head. I panicked. Ran for help. Got lost. Got found 2 days later. But I never told anyone she was with me. I buried it. Became the survivor. Left her soul here. The forest didn't forget. It made the whole ridge a mausoleum to what I did. We found Trey sitting by a creek. Staring into the water. But it wasn't water. It was a mirrored surface. He didn't blink when we called his name. Just kept whispering to the reflection. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I just wanted to be seen. His eyes started bleeding. We dragged him back. Marcus was gone when we returned. Not dead. Gone. No trace. The fake Jules was sitting by the fire again. But now it looked thinner. Its eyes were replaced by mirrors. It spoke in all of our voices. Mixed together. You keep trying to bury your memory, but the ridge remembers. It remembers your truth. Trey hung himself from a pine the next morning. Camera strap. Silent. No note. But the bark behind him was carved with a message. Not in his handwriting. You never left. This is just a memory stuck on repeat. Nina broke. She held her camera up to her own eye and whispered, if I film myself forgetting, maybe it won't matter anymore. I slapped it out of her hands. We fought. Then cried. Then just sat. Silent. That night, I made a decision. One last recording. I sat by the fire. Turned the mic up full gain. Pointed it into the darkness. Tell me, I said aloud. Why me? The wind responded. But it wasn't wind. It was her. Because you walked away. You chose to forget. And now, you'll remember for all of them. I woke up the next morning, alone. Nina's tent was empty. So was the fake Jules. The circle was clean. No gear. No fire. Just one mirror, propped in the dirt. And on it, etched in frost, you are the last name. They say some places are hallowed, sanctuaries where the veil between worlds thins, where time folds and spirits linger. I never believed in those stories, not until I was drawn to the ancient stone circle deep in the remote hills of Dartmoor, England. The villagers called it the Hollow Stones, a sacred place where their ancestors once worshipped, where offerings were left and secrets whispered on the wind. But beneath that reverence lay a darkness. A presence older than any living memory, something waiting, watching. I went there to study the folklore, to capture the beauty of a forgotten place. What I found instead was a nightmare that clawed its way into my mind, twisting my reality and threatening to consume everything I thought I knew about this world. This is my story, a warning carved in blood and shadow beneath the ancient stones. The day I arrived, the sky was a heavy gray, like the world was holding its breath. The path leading to the hollow stones was overgrown, tangled with thorn and bramble, as if nature itself tried to bar the way. Locals eyed me with suspicion when I asked about the place. Old Mary, the village herbalist, told me to leave well enough alone, her voice trembling. But curiosity burned brighter than fear. I set up camp just beyond the circle, where the grass was patchy and the air smelled faintly of something rotten and old. As dusk fell, a chill settled over the hills, and a low hum thrummed beneath the wind. That's when I first heard it, a whisper, barely audible, like breath against my ear, calling my name. Sleep eluded me. The whispers grew louder, no longer just at the edge of hearing but circling me, a chorus of voices spoken in a language older than time. I stepped into the circle, heart hammering, stones looming like silent sentinels covered in moss and dark runes. The air was thick, alive with a pressure that pressed against my chest. Shadows flickered unnaturally, and I swear I saw shapes moving just beyond sight, figures cloaked in mist, eyes glowing faintly in the gloom. Then came the breath, cold and foul, right behind me. I spun, but nothing was there. Only the oppressive silence of the stones. I knew then, something ancient and malevolent was bound to this place, and it was hungry. The cavern yawned before me, an endless pit dripping with slick black ichor that reeked of death and decay. The walls pulsed with a faint, sickly glow, the same green light that had burned into the stones above. I hesitated, the whispers roaring in my mind, promising power, knowledge, release, if only I'd surrender. But my blood ran cold when I saw them, shapes moving deep within the shadows of the cavern, something not quite human, something twisted and ancient. Their eyes shone with cruel intelligence, and as they emerged, the light revealed grotesque forms, elongated limbs, cracked skin like old parchment, mouths filled with rows of needle-sharp teeth. I wanted to run, but my feet were rooted to the spot, frozen by the primal terror clawing through my mind. One of them reached out, and I felt a coldness seep into my bones, a corruption that promised oblivion. I screamed and stumbled backward, but the cavern seemed to stretch on forever, a prison carved from nightmare. I knew then, the sacred place wasn't holy. It was a trap. A prison for something evil, something that wanted out. Back at the surface, I was different. The mark on my hand burned like a brand, seeping dark shadows beneath my skin. My thoughts were no longer my own, they twisted with the whispers, feeding on my fear and despair. The village around me began to change. Shadows lengthened unnaturally, faces and windows twisted into grins that weren't human. I saw the villagers gathering beneath the stones at night, chanting in the ancient tongue, their eyes glazed and hollow. They weren't worshipping. They were feeding the darkness. The evil beneath the stones was waking, and it needed a vessel. I fought to hold on to what little humanity I had left, but every moment the shadow inside me grew stronger. The forest itself seemed alive, branches reaching like claws, roots twisting like serpents, ready to drag me back beneath the earth. I was running out of time. The nights became unbearable. The shadows clawed at the edges of my vision, twisting and writhing into monstrous shapes that no sane mind could comprehend. Every whisper grew louder, becoming a deafening roar that shattered what was left of my sanity. My dreams were no refuge. I was trapped in a labyrinth of stone and darkness, endlessly falling, chased by faceless things whose touch turned my flesh to rot. During the day, the villagers' hollow eyes followed me like predators marking their prey. Old Mary disappeared, leaving behind only a single, cryptic warning scratched into the cabin wall: the stone hungers. It wants its due. One evening, driven by terror and desperation, I returned to the stone circle. The air was thick with the scent of earth and blood. As I stepped inside, the ground beneath me shuddered and split open, swallowing me into the abyss below. I tumbled into a cavern larger than any I'd seen, its walls lined with bones and strange, glowing runes. At its heart, a pulsing mass of darkness throbbed, alive and watching. A voice, ancient and cruel, whispered in my mind, "You are ours now. Your flesh, your soul, the price for trespassing." I screamed, but no sound escaped my lips. The darkness began to seep into me, filling my veins with icy fire. The sacred place was no sanctuary. It was a prison, and I had become its prisoner. The darkness spread inside me like a living poison, slithering through my veins, twisting my thoughts into a maddening spiral. I was no longer certain where I ended and the evil began. The villagers, or what remained of them, moved like shadows themselves, eyes empty voids glowing faintly in the mist. They whispered of sacrifices, of blood spilled to keep the ancient thing beneath the stones imprisoned. But the bindings were weakening. The pulsating mass in the cavern's heart called to me, promising power beyond mortal dreams, if I would only surrender. Desperation clawed at my soul, the lure of escape from the torment almost irresistible. One night, drawn by the unholy hunger, I returned to the cavern alone. The air was thick and suffocating, dripping with ancient malevolence. As I approached the pulsing mass, it reached out, tendrils of darkness slipping into my flesh, burning with icy fire. Pain exploded in my mind, memories twisting into grotesque visions of death and rebirth. I screamed silently, the shadows swallowing me whole. When I awoke, I was changed. The sacred place had claimed me, and I had become its vessel. I awoke with a mouth full of dirt and a body aching as if crushed beneath the earth itself. But it wasn't just the pain. It was the new presence inside me, writhing and whispering in a voice older than time. I stumbled from the cavern, the mark on my hand now glowing faintly, pulsating with every heartbeat. The shadows followed, no longer just at the edge of vision, but crawling over my skin, entwining with my very soul. The village was a ghost town, deserted except for the twisted figures that once were people, now hollow husks controlled by the darkness beneath the stones. I felt their eyes on me, their silent accusation. I was their herald, their curse incarnate. The voice inside me urged me to return, to finish the ritual and free it from its earthly prison. But somewhere, deep beneath the layers of terror and corruption, I fought. Fought for my sanity, for my humanity. Armed with what little knowledge I'd gathered, fragments of old prayers, and symbols carved into ancient oak, I returned to the circle one final time. The stones pulsed violently, alive with a hunger that mirrored my own. The sky darkened, and the ground trembled as the entity beneath stirred, desperate to break free. I began the ritual, chanting the sacred words with shaking lips, feeling the shadows push back, clawing to silence me. The air was thick with death and decay, the screams of lost souls echoing in my ears. With one final cry, the darkness recoiled, the mark burned away, and the stones fell silent. The village's cursed eyes cleared, and light seeped back into the forest. But as I left the hollow stones behind, I knew this was only a reprieve. The evil was patient. And it would wait. There's a place few talk about anymore, Black Hollow. Tucked deep in the folds of the Appalachian Mountains, it's a stretch of forest so dense, so ancient, that it seems to breathe with its own dark heartbeat. The kind of place where the fog lingers long after dawn, and the trees lean close, whispering secrets to those who dare listen. Most people steer clear of Black Hollow, driven away by old wives' tales and the weight of vanished hikers whose names are now nothing more than smudges in dusty police files. But those warnings only made it more tempting for me. For years, I chased the stories, the disappearances, the strange sightings, the uneasy feeling that something watches from just beyond the trees. I was drawn there by curiosity, or maybe something darker, a need to know what lies beyond the veil of the ordinary. What I found was not what I expected. This is my story. The story of how I stepped into Black Hollow, where souls are never quite at rest, and the forest keeps its secrets well, sometimes too well. I arrived at Black Hollow on a late October afternoon, when the sun was already slanting low behind the mountains. The forest was painted in the fiery colors of fall, crimson, burnt orange, golden yellows, but beneath the beauty lurked a silence that set my nerves on edge. My gear was simple. A backpack with basic supplies, a map that seemed to end at the edge of the hollow, a compass, and a small digital recorder, something I planned to use to capture any sounds or voices that might help unravel the mystery. The locals in the nearby town of Millridge warned me once I asked for directions. "Don't go too deep," said the old man at the gas station, his eyes dull but wary. "People go in, but they don't always come out. If you hear a voice calling your name, don't answer it. Keep your eyes on the trail." I nodded, but the warnings only stirred my excitement. Mystery was my addiction. By the time I set foot on the narrow trail leading into Black Hollow, the sky was bruising purple. The forest swallowed the light quickly. The crunch of dead leaves under my boots was the only sound, yet I had the feeling I wasn't alone. A chill ran down my spine as I pulled my jacket tighter. Hours passed as I pressed deeper into the forest. The trail grew faint and less traveled. Trees twisted into unnatural shapes. Branches scratched the air like skeletal fingers. The wind seemed to carry whispers, soft, indistinct words just beyond understanding. I flipped on my recorder, speaking softly into the mic. October 15th, entering Black Hollow. Trail conditions worsening. Nightfall approaching. The recorder hissed static. I paused, listening. A breath. A sigh. A name whispered through the trees. "Michael," I froze. No one should have known my name out here. I told myself it was the wind, or my imagination. But deep down, I felt something watching. Something waiting. The sun dipped below the ridge. Darkness spread like ink through the hollow. I set up camp near an ancient oak tree, its bark cracked and blackened like burnt skin. As I settled in, the whispers grew louder. Words I couldn't quite grasp, but filled with a dread I couldn't shake. That night, sleep was elusive. I dreamt of shadowy figures drifting just beyond the firelight, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. I woke to the sound of my name again. This time, closer. "Michael, come." The forest was alive, and it was calling me deeper. The forest seemed to breathe around me, a slow, suffocating pulse that filled the thick, stale air of Black Hollow. After fleeing the cabin, the walls still scarred with the names of the lost. I stumbled deeper into the undergrowth, my limbs trembling from exhaustion and the cold bite of fear. The names carved into that ancient wood haunted every step. I could almost hear them whispering in the shadows, eyes full of pleading, endless sorrow. The river, once a silver thread cutting through the trees, had become something darker now. The water no longer sparkled with life, instead, it rippled thick and black, pooling like spilled ink in forgotten hollows. I crouched by its edge, the mud sticky beneath my fingers, and stared at the reflections that twisted in the oily surface. Faces appeared, pale and desperate, flickering like ghosts in a broken mirror. Their mouths moved without sound, silently screaming warnings I couldn't decipher. The recorder at my belt buzzed faintly. I fumbled it out and pressed play. The hiss of static gave way to a haunting melody, a lullaby sung by voices that were no longer living. It floated through the trees, a mournful call that both comforted and terrified me. I forced myself to follow the sound, every nerve screaming for me to run, but curiosity clawed deeper than fear. I found myself in a clearing carpeted with brittle bones and broken twigs. In its center, an altar of cold stone rose from the earth, stained with dark red, the color of old blood. Strange runes, faintly glowing with a dull blue light, were carved into its cracked surface. Surrounding it were gnarled roots, twisting and writhing as if alive, encasing the altar like grasping fingers. The voices swirled around me, urgent and accusing. The hollow demands, sacrifice. My heart pounded painfully in my chest. The woman in white appeared then, stepping from the mist with a slow grace that made my skin crawl. Her eyes were empty wells of darkness, absorbing the pale light of the moon. "You can end this," she whispered, her voice like a wind that chilled the marrow. "Join us. Become part of Black Hollow." I felt my legs freeze, rooted to the soil. A paralyzing dread wrapped around me as the forest seemed to lean in closer, listening. I shook my head, fighting the invisible bonds, and finally broke free with a surge of desperate strength. The forest screamed with rage as I ran, the branches tearing at my skin and clothes like claws. Her laughter followed me, a hollow echo carried by the wind. I didn't stop until the trees thinned, and I found myself at the forest's heart, a cathedral of ancient giants whose tangled branches blot out the sky. The silence here was profound, thick like the weight of a tomb. My battered recorder still whispered faint voices when I stopped to listen. Playing back the last recording, new sounds emerged beneath the lullabies and whispers. A map of ghostly words guiding me deeper, toward a forgotten burial ground. I followed the invisible trail, each step heavy with dread. Then, almost without warning, the ground gave way beneath me, swallowing me into cold darkness. I landed in a cavern bathed in eerie blue light, glowing roots weaving a ghostly web overhead. Around me floated spectral figures, their faces twisted in eternal sorrow and pain. They told me their story in murmurs that vibrated through the air. How the forest once was sacred, a place of balance and life, until greed and bloodshed poisoned it. The night-born, souls hollowed out by curse and hunger, were trapped here, forever bound to the roots of the forest, feeding its endless hunger. The woman in white appeared again, reaching out her hand. "Only one can free us." Fear warred with resolve. I took her hand. Light tore through the cavern, ripping apart shadows and darkness. When I woke, dawn was breaking at the forest's edge. Black Hollow was silent, for now. But the hunger remains. The dawn's weak light barely pierced the dense canopy as I stumbled from the cavern's mouth, my body aching and my mind frayed. Black Hollow greeted me not with relief, but with a suffocating stillness, the kind that presses against your skin and fills your lungs with dread. I wasn't the same man who had entered this place days ago. Something inside me had changed, something darker, something tethered now to the forest's eternal hunger. The whispers were louder. Clearer. No longer mere voices but commands that slithered beneath my skin. "Return, return," I tried to resist, but the forest's pull was relentless. My compass spun madly, useless against the hollow's will. My feet carried me through twisted undergrowth, to a place the voices called the heart of Black Hollow. There, standing beneath towering ancient trees woven tight with glowing roots, was the stone circle. Moss and time had cloaked it, but the air hummed with power. I stepped inside, and the ground pulsed beneath me like a heartbeat. The air thickened as the earth opened without warning, pulling me into darkness once again. This time, I landed in a vast underground cavern, where spectral souls drifted in endless torment. Their faces flickered, frozen between agony and longing. They stretched their hands to me, voices rising in a desperate chorus. "We are the lost. Bound by the curse. The forest's prisoners." Among them appeared the woman in white, her black eyes more hollow, her form flickering like a fading candle. "Only one can break the chain. Only one can end the hunger." Her voice was both a plea and a command. I realized the truth. Black Hollow's curse could be broken, but at a terrible price. To free the lost souls, one must take their place. To become the forest's new guardian, trapped beneath its roots, eternally feeding the hollow. My heart shattered beneath the weight of that sacrifice. Yet, there was no escape. The voices begged me. The roots cradled me. The hollow called my name. I reached out, grasped the fading hand of the woman, and accepted my fate. Light shattered the darkness, and the cavern was gone. I woke on the forest floor, the first rays of dawn painting the sky. Black Hollow was quiet. But inside me, the hunger stirred. I was now part of the forest's eternal song, a soul among many, watching, waiting, whispering. If you ever hear your name called from deep within the woods, don't answer. Because some places don't just hide the lost. They create them. They say the world has cracks, places where reality thins and the impossible seeps through. Hollow Creek is one of those places. A sleepy town wedged between misty hills and dense forests, it looks like any other on the map. But something sinister waits beneath the surface, something that steals people without a trace. Over the past decade, dozens have vanished from Hollow Creek, disappearing into thin air as if swallowed by the very air around them. No bodies. No clues. No goodbyes. The town's residents whisper of shadows that bend light, of fog that moves against the wind, and a silence that eats sound. Curiosity drew me here, chasing headlines and rumors. But what I found wasn't just a mystery. It was a trap. And I might not leave. This is what happened when the air itself turned against us, and how the vanishing point swallowed those who dared to get too close. I arrived in Hollow Creek on a chilly November evening, the sun setting behind hills draped in burnt orange and brown. The air was thick with dampness and the scent of rotting leaves, but it felt wrong. Heavy. Like the atmosphere was waiting, watching. The local diner was buzzing with muted conversations about the latest disappearance. A teenage girl had vanished from her bedroom 3 nights prior, leaving her bed untouched but empty. No signs of struggle, no forced entry, just gone. People avoided talking about it openly, but their eyes held the truth, fear. I sat in the corner, notebook ready, and listened to stories dripping with dread. Went to bed, woke up, she wasn't there, said the sheriff, a grizzled man with haunted eyes. No footprints outside, no signs of a break-in. Like she just evaporated. That night, my motel room was suffocatingly still. No hum of city life, just an unnatural silence that pressed against the windows. I felt eyes on me, unseen but palpable. As I drifted into uneasy sleep, a chill crawled down my spine, a whisper of breath on my neck. I bolted upright. A voice, distant but clear, called my name. Eli. Eli, I wasn't Eli. Or at least, I wasn't supposed to be. The next day, I started walking the empty streets, searching for anything, anyone who might explain the impossible disappearances. But the town felt abandoned, as if everyone was holding their breath. I talked to Mrs. Carmichael, an elderly woman who had lived there all her life. They vanish without a trace, she said, gripping my arm with surprising strength. No struggle, no warning. One moment they're here. The next, gone. I asked her if she'd ever seen anything strange. She lowered her voice. The air, it shifts. Like it's alive. Sometimes, I see people standing too still, staring into nothing. Then they disappear. That night, I camped near the old railroad bridge. The site of the first documented disappearance decades ago. The fog rolled in thick and fast, swallowing everything. As the moon rose, the fog twisted into shapes, figures outlined in mist, faces blurred and shifting. They hovered, watching. I felt a pull, a tug in my chest, drawing me toward the swirling fog. Suddenly, the air rippled like water. The space beside me shimmered and fractured. A cold wind blasted through, and in an instant, a man in a soaked trench coat vanished before my eyes, dissolving into nothingness. I stumbled back, heart hammering. The fog pulsed with silent hunger. Into thin air fear was a cage tightening around my mind, but I couldn't leave. I had to understand. I returned night after night, documenting the impossible. Each time, the fog thickened, growing denser, moving against the wind, swallowing light and sound. Sometimes, I heard whispers calling names, my name. Other times, the silence screamed. The disappearances followed no pattern, old, young, stranger, friend. Just vanished. One evening, I spotted a young woman frozen on the edge of the mist, eyes glazed and distant. I called to her. She didn't respond. The fog reached out, tendrils curling like fingers. Before I could act, she blinked once, and then was gone. A cold emptiness filled the space where she stood. I realized then that the fog wasn't just swallowing people, it was erasing them. Removing them from existence. The town's terror was deeper than I imagined. Driven by desperation, I searched the old archives at the town library. Dusty newspapers told a chilling tale. Hollow Creek was built over a fracture in reality, a thin place where the boundary between worlds is fragile. Some called it the vanishing point. Every few years, the fissure widens, and the fog sweeps through, claiming souls to feed on the thin veil between realities. There was a warning scrawled in a forgotten diary: when the fog calls, do not answer. To answer is to become part of the void. I realized I'd been foolish to think I could outsmart the Hollow Creek fog. That night, the fog came for me. It seeped beneath my door, curling tendrils creeping like ice. The voices whispered my name. I closed my eyes, fighting the pull. When I opened them, I was somewhere else, an endless gray expanse, cold and silent. Shadows drifted at the edge of vision, lost souls trapped between worlds, reaching out in eternal longing. I screamed, but no sound escaped. I was part of the fog now, vanished into thin air. If you ever find yourself near Hollow Creek, listen to the wind. If the fog seems to move against the breeze, and you hear your name carried in the mist, run. Don't look back. Because some places don't just swallow you whole. They erase you. They make you vanish. And once you cross the vanishing point, you may never return.